my name's Mandy and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I thought I would share with you how I've basted and quilted up this quilt. So this quilt is a pattern by Kim Deal. It's called the Riverside Knoll, and the fabrics I've used are from her fabric range, Right as Rain. So this initially was a block of the month. It was facilitated by a local fabric shop to me called Liberty Bell. So yeah, I've finished it all now, and I thought I would just chat to you how I've basted and quilted it. When I first started quilting, I had to rely on the literature to inform me how to actually baste and quilt a quilt. So I just thought I'd show you some of the magazines that I used to read avidly to learn me how to quilt. So this one is quite an old one. When I used to go on holiday to the States, I used to pick up the recent and old magazines as well. And this one, like I say, is from the 70s. It hasn't got glossy pages, but it's got the information in there that I need. Now this is the Quilt Almanac, so every time I went away I always used to purchase this one because it was just full of tips and techniques, full of information on how to quilt, and not only quilt, make other projects as well. So yeah, it was jam-packed, this one was. I mean, look at this baby quilt. It's fussy cutted round teddy bears there. I think it's absolutely adorable. And then it goes on not only to show you how to piece your blocks together, but also how to make your binding. Like I say, it was always full of good information. Now looking through these magazines has done me good really, because look at this one, Twinkling Lights. I'd forgotten about this, and don't be surprised in future vlogs if you see this quilt being made. Now this is one of my favourite magazines. It's called the McCall's Quilting, and I used to buy this on a monthly basis. This was a really good magazine because it had so many beautiful quilt patterns in it. And this is one of my favourite designers. It's Jerry Robinson, and I think her company is called Quilted Seeds Designs. Isn't this a lovely quilt? I want to make this one. But here's an old photograph now of a design by Jerry. I made this, it must be 15 years ago. And I think it was called Fresh Cottons, the fabric range. But yeah, I loved this quilt. I made it for my granddaughter. So yeah, that's one of them. And looking at this particular McCall's magazine, I spotted this project called Apple Pie, this table topper. And I think I've been wanting to make this for quite a while. Isn't it beautiful? So yeah, don't be surprised if you see this project pop up in a future vlog. Now this one is by Eleanor Burns, and I've got many books and magazines by Eleanor Burns. Her ethos is that you can make a quilt in a day. I've made this one, only I didn't make those pillow shams. But yeah, the idea is, like I say, you make a quilt in a day. And she used to have a television series, and I also used to watch that. But now we've got the luxury of watching it on YouTube. So she goes through all the basics. So when you buy one of her patterns, you learn how to cut and piece together those blocks. And this is my Morning Star quilt that I made. I purchased these fabrics, and it's closed down now, unfortunately, from a little shop called Quilter's Cottage in Englewood. I also used to go on holiday to Florida, so I have plenty of access there to different quilt shops, and I would speak to the staff, to customers, find out, some tips and techniques on quilting. So yeah, that's how I learnt to quilt initially. Before we get into it, let's talk about the quilt backing. So this is the backing fabric I chose. Again, it's a design by Kim Deal and it's called Prairie Vine. It's in this beautiful rich burgundy colour. Now the reason I've laundered the fabric is because there's a high risk it could shrink on future laundering of the quilt, and also the colour could leach out onto the quilt top. So when it comes to basting quilts, gone are the days when I get on my knees, believe you me. And I've tried everything. I've used the dining room table, I've used table clamps, I've even got a quilt, a basting gun. I've tried everything to keep my back straight and eliminate the risk of creases. But then I watched a tutorial by Melanie Ham. I'll pop a link into that tutorial because she's far better at explaining than me. But she was using pool noodles. Now the thing is with pool noodles is I tend to make a lot of big quilts and the pool noodles aren't wide enough. This is what I use. So this is a waste pipe. You can buy them from B&Q. This is 21.5 millimeters in diameter, so it's only a thin pipe. Okay, and that's what it says on it. Let me just take that bit off. There. It's just an overflow, is it? Yes. Okay, and they come in 3 metre length, so it's very long, longer than it's going to be wider than your average quilt, this is, so plenty of space on here. Now, the other thing I've done is I've used, it's already comes split, it's called split pipe lagging, it's polyurethane foam, and I just clip this on it. Now, I have 3 of these, and they're all in the garage. You know, they've got clips on the walls and that's where I store them. But if you haven't got the room, you could saw the pipe up into manageable lengths to keep in a box. And your pipe lagging is quite malleable, so that could also go into a box because they come in smaller lengths, these do, but they just, like I say, snap onto your pipe. And that's what I use. It's brilliant. And I've never looked back. So let me show you how I do it. Use a plastic coated tablecloth to protect the wood of my table against the quilting pins, and also it's best to use this type of tablecloth because the pins will glide against the plastic when I'm using them, you see. So once you can see, I've laid out the backing fabric onto my table and laid the pole on top of the fabric. Now the split bit of the lagging, what you can see there, is at the bottom. This will stop the pole from rolling about, so it's quite useful to have that split there. Okay, so the next step is to bring the fabric over the pole like that, and then I'm going to start pinning the fabric to the foam insulation, and that will keep it in place. So as you can see, I mean, my fabric's going a little bit off, but I'm using this design here to make sure, now I'm eyeballing that it's straight. So as you can see, there's a little bit more fabric here than there is here, but this is looking quite straight. The pins I use are contrasting ones, okay, because what you don't want to be doing is finding that you don't know where you've pinned when you come to take this off this roll. So yeah, so I'm going to carry on pinning all this on and then I'll get back to you. So now I've managed to secure the fabric to the pole, and then just going to roll up the backing. So as you can see, the pole is far longer than my dining room table, and I just keep making sure as I roll the fabric onto the pole that the sides are neat, they're keeping straight. So then I place my second pole on top of the backing fabric, and I'm going to roll on the wadding. Now I make sure the wadding is the right side up this time. So as you can see, I've started to pin the wadding to the foam on the second pole. I'm going to use my third pole for the quilt top. When I pin the quilt top to the pole, I make sure that the quilt is facing pretty side up. So this is what it should look like when all the three fabrics are pinned to the poles. As you can see, I've got my backing fabric, then my wadding, and then my quilt top. So my preferred method of basting a quilt is to use these quilting pins. As you'll note, they have a curve. This enables you to push the pin through all the layers of fabric and so reduce the chance of the three fabrics from shifting. I usually use my hand as a guide to determine the space I leave between the pins. So once I've basted the available quilt space, I then start to fold up the quilt from the bottom, and then I pull more fabric from the poles and carry on basting until the whole quilt is basted up. And here is my quilt all basted up now, ready for quilting. So let me just show you the different quilting patterns I've used. I will take photographs so it's a little bit clearer. But here in these squares, I've used a cream cotton in the top thread and a burgundy in the bottom thread. Some people like to make a feature of their quilting. I don't know, I wasn't that confident. I was going to pick a gold thread for the bottom thread for the bobbin, but I decided I would use burgundy. And that's another thing with quilting. If you want your quilting to be a statement piece, then choose a contrasting cotton from your fabric. If you want to disguise your quilting, if you're not confident, then you can always use a busy pattern like this. See, you can't see if I've made a mistake on the busy fabrics, you see. So most of it is by using a darning foot. I've free motion quilted. So I always start with a practice first, because I haven't free motion quilted for quite a while, and my machine's disintegrated. I've had them that long, so I'm just using a pair of work gloves, inexpensive, and they do the job just as well. So on these particular blocks, I changed the top thread to match the fabric that I was quilting. I've also quilted some straight lines on the inner centre block, and I used my walking foot for that. border, the inner border up here, I've done I call a loop-de-loo pattern. So you quilt along with your darning foot, you make a circle, quilt along and do it like that. For some reason I decided I would use the matching thread for the top thread, and I use a little pattern on my one of the embroidery stitches on my machine. So yeah, that was very laborious having to keep taking out the different coloured threads. So yeah, but I like the effect. Now this is a leaf design, and as you can see, you can just probably make out the vine. I will take a photograph, like I say, and I've quilted round and up, and I've used, you can still see a bit of white chalk line. I've used a pounce, and I'm going to show you how I did that in a moment. And then for the outer border, I've just gone with like a zigzag along one up, and I did use just one colour thread there because I think I'd had enough by then. But yeah, it's all quilted up, and I'm so pleased with how it's turned out. This is the stencil I used for the vine pattern, which I quilted along the borders. The template's made of plastic, so it's reusable and it's easy to use with the pounce. So this is my pounce. I've had this quite a few years now. So if you take the bottom off, you can see there's like a toweling fabric, and that's where the powder comes through. So you can pounce it on your fabric and you refill it at the top there. Now what I do, I don't pounce as such, I don't tap the pounce on top of the stencil. What I do is put my stencil on top of the fabric, and then I just gently drag the pounce across, and the edges of inside the stencil just catch the powder, you see, and then you're not getting clouds of powder to breathe in. And that's how I use my pounce. If you haven't got a pounce, what you could do, this is what I've read, you could get some muslin, something like that, and cut a circle out and put some powder in the centre of the circle, such as talcum powder or cornflour, and then gather up the fabric and use that as a pounce. I haven't tried it, but that's what the literature says. The other thing is, with this pounce, because it's white powder, it is only going to show up on dark fabrics. Now if I was using a stencil on lighter coloured fabrics, I would probably use a water soluble marking pen. Once marked up, I actually use my free motion quilting to quilt over the stencil lines, as you can see. I just thought I'd share with you how I based and how I quilted up this lovely quilt. I'm so pleased with how it turned out. So if you enjoyed this vlog, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, or even if it's just a letter or an emoji, anything to give me some interaction. Share with your friends who you think might be interested. And until I see you next time, which hopefully will be next week when I share with you my June makes, happy crafting!